One of my favorite things about Star Rail is their ability to hide future plot points and stories within items or events that we have already experienced in-game. Some of these can be obvious as they take center stage. For example, when Topaz revealed to us the influence of the IPC and that there are 10 other Stonehearts that are still awaiting us. Or, for example, within the latest patch, not only did we get to learn more about the Galaxy Rangers and the Genius Society's Dr. Primitive, but we also got to know more about Polka Kakamond through the unknowable domain, and I personally think that's really cool. However, there are some incredibly small details that are really well hidden, which only few players got to experience the payoff that it is to have paid attention to them and got rewarded for it. In this case, we have things such as Silverwolf's mail back in patch 1.1, which revealed information about a small child with a pacifier that just so happened to be at Pierpoint, which was scenting at Opal. Also, one of my personal favorites, the Trailblaze Timer item, which we get during our Ascension quests and instantly gets consumed. This item has a description that says, "The relic of a nameless, an item that might have been a pocket watch or a compass," which is such a nice detail regarding the whole Penacony storyline and how Clocky is actually supposed to be a compass rather than a clock. And in this particular item's description, it also mentions how this is a gift that Mikhail Char Legwork obtained from a Trailblazer from the past, which is probably the one that he met in Lusaka. So yeah, with that in mind, for this particular video, I want to talk about the trace level of materials that, those that we farm endlessly in the Crimson Calyxes, and how so far they have been able to show us the lore of Star Rail and what is to come to a certain extent in future patches. Some of these can be very obvious, while others are a little bit well hidden. For simplicity's sake, I am adding timestamps for every single Ascension material so that if there is one in particular that you want to know about, you can much more easily find it. But yeah, Ascension materials released in 1.0, for the most part, focus on lore that happened in the past before Star Rail's timeline, or make references to events that will happen within the 1.0 patch itself. So, with all that being said, let us see how Star Rail hit its story within its trace level of materials. Going over the 1.0 materials first, we have the Antimatter Legion Blades, which represent the Legion's ranks depending on how they are meant to approach a planet's destruction. Shatter Blades, being the lowest ranking ones, are tasked with driving peace out of the planet, be it by acts of violence, chaos, burning down houses, political chaos probably. That is essentially their job. Lifeless Blades, on the other hand, must eradicate all life, slaying anyone that dares oppose them. And finally, the World Breaker Blades, which are tasked with purifying the world, appearing at the very end of everything and turning the world into ashes. Up next, we have the Xianzhou arrows, naturally representing the Xianzhou Alliance and Land the Hunt. Arrows of Beast Hunters and arrows of Demon Slayers are simply ones that have been forged by Xianzhou craftsmen. The former being usually gifts parents give to their children when they have grown up and can join the hunt, while the latter are used by the Alliance to slay abominations of abundance. However, the final arrow that we have are the arrows of the Star Chaser, which are remains of Lux arrows fired by Land themselves. These apparently can only be created by Furnace Masters like Huayan or Yingxing in the past, which essentially tells us to how powerful these ones can be. Keys of Erudition. I am honestly a little bit confused by them. Their naming convention goes from inspiration to knowledge and then wisdom. In each level, they represent different levels of intellect, with inspiration being used to unlock ideas for Scholar, knowledge being used to help people attain a better understanding of something, and lastly, wisdom is meant to be used to allow people to enter the Temple of News, which essentially gives them nearly infinite knowledge, since News is the Aeon of Erudition, and I'm kind of assuming that this is probably something that all Genius Society members have. There's nothing said about this within the lore, but that's just an assumption I have. If somebody has like more information about the Keys of Erudition, I would definitely love to know. Next, we have Ascension materials for the Preservation, which all are shields that were wielded by warriors to combat different types of enemies. What genuinely surprises me about this, though, is that the Endurance of Bronze was used to fight Leviathans. Somehow. Like, yes, it is more of like a makeshift kind of like, yeah, we don't really have anything else to fight Leviathans, so we're gonna use this. But they still used this particular shield to fight them. While on the other hand, the next upgrade, Oath of Steel, was more used to fight between warriors, because like apparently what this is supposed to reference is a battle between kingdoms. The only thing I can think of is maybe it has to do something related to Sapphire. I think it was the Stoneheart that I'm trying to think about, because in the Mirrored Celestia trailer, it shows a Hypogriffin, which I'm assuming has to do with like medieval kind of aesthetics, and I feel like Oath of Steel would definitely fit this narrative. But yeah, it's just kind of strange that we go from Leviathans to humans, and then we go into the tier 4 Safeguard of Amber, and we're back to fighting Leviathans. And given the naming convention of this being used to fight Leviathans, and also that it's Amber, it's likely that this has to do a lot with Qlipoth. So, I don't know, that's just really cool, really interesting, absolutely insane, but I definitely want to see more about what this would lead towards if we actually get to see more of Leviathans. The next ones that I have on the list are the Nihility and Harmony. I genuinely don't have much to add in regards to lore for these two. The Nihility materials appear to be made with dark matter, which the only thing I could really find is the fact that the Doomsday Beast's core is powered by dark matter. Beyond that, I have no idea. And as for the Harmony materials, they're just music boxes that are used to worship Shippei and to be able to help unite the family. So that's really all that I have. If any of you guys know more about these, like, I would definitely love to know. Last, but certainly not least, we have the Abundance materials, which are related to Yao Shi and the Denizens of Abundance. These materials range from a seed that helps heal wounds of those who touch it, which then grows into a sprout that, although it brings life to anything near it, also causes people's bones to twitch and their bodies to itch, which sounds really concerning, especially when we keep on moving forward and this sprout finally grows into a flower, and it grows endlessly, and it's able to root itself inside a person's body, taking over them like a cordyceps. It's terrifying, in all honesty. So this essentially just hints at how the abundance grows and why they are considered, and like, you know, why some of these enemies have like branches coming out of them. I know it probably was pretty obvious, but seeing a more detailed description of this is kind of disturbing. That's just what I wanted to add. Not gonna lie, that was a lot more information than what I thought I would be saying for the Ascension materials in freaking 1.0. But we got all that out of the way, which means, hey, we have officially made it to the halfway point. Good job on you for sticking around up to this point in the video. Here, Take this little guy that I bought in Penacony for your troubles. They will aid you on your journey. Just like you are aiding me by watching this video. And if these sort of videos are to your liking, by hitting that subscribe button, which is free, and it only takes a second, you can help me out a lot more. At the end of the day, you can always just unsubscribe if you ever feel like the content that I'm creating is not to your liking, and that's a perfectly valid reason. I just want to say as well that I appreciate you all for all the growth for this channel, and that I'm happy to have you guys in this journey by my side. Being able to interact with you guys through the comments has been great. So yeah, with all that being said, back to the video. In patch 2.0, we got 3 new trace level up materials, these ones being for the Path of Destruction, Harmony, and Nihility. I want to start us off with the one that I find most intriguing, which is the Harmony materials, because they outright were telling us the lore of what was happening within the family and Penacony. Here we have the firmament note, the celestial section, and the heavenly melody, all of which refer to music. And, you know, it's something that you would expect from the family, but reading the first words, I didn't really notice this at first. We can actually see that all of these refer to religious topics. You know, such as those that are promoted by the order and their choir in song. Yeah, I genuinely did not realize that until now. However, what I find to be the most intriguing and fascinating detail can be found within the descriptions of these items. We are outright told that these pieces of music were scattered from order and are lost or drowned by external forces, hinting that Qlipoth absorbed Enna, obviously, because we did know that, but we didn't know that it would still be remaining there. Like, as far as we knew, Enna was gone, not that they were trapped within Qlipoth. Enna's voice was still there, which was a voice which no one hears it until it dissolves into a song that no one notices until it ignites a spark of inspiration. And most importantly, no one feels it until it is forgotten by all. All 3 of these lines of text feel like they hint at the fact that Enna was still there waiting for their time to strike and to be able to return. And that, in my opinion, is such a perfect detail. Coming up next, we have the trace level up material for the Nihility, which are based around Heliobi, which we did get to learn a fair amount back in patch 1.5 with the whole Ghost Hunting Squad event. One of my favorite events, by the way. Each stage of all of these materials, it represents a Heliobi that is stronger than the last one, going from a feeble spirit to a mature spirit, and in the final stage is, in my opinion, very intriguing because it is said that it takes a form of a beast, which looks a lot like an Oni. In their description, it is mentioned that it takes the appearance in regards to like the Flaming Catastrophe War, which focuses on the Xianzhou having to fight wing weavers. But the one that I feel like is most important of it all is that it mentions the Flint Emperor, which happens to be a Heliobi. So this might actually just be a representation of how some of the Flint Emperor minions might look in the future. Finally, in 2.0, we were introduced to more lore regarding enemies of the Xianzhou, way before their initial appearance. We got to learn about Borisin through their fangs and jaws. Initially, their teeth tell us about how these are essentially the Borisin's weapons and that they must be kept in good condition. Borisin worships strength, So those that are able to keep their weapons and bodies in perfect shape are those that will rule amongst them. The Sawteeth gives us an introduction to Lupitoxin, used to inflict fear into the enemies and then being able to tear them to shreds so that they can feast upon their blood. Which again is kind of more reminiscent of a vampire, but being added into what is essentially a werewolf was a very interesting concept. I liked it. Lastly though, we have the Moonrage Fangs, which display to us a Borisin's whole mouth. That one was disturbing. I don't know why, but just seeing the whole mandible it's just disturbing to me. Through their description, we learn about Moonrage and that even though it enhances Borisin to an absurd extent, it also causes them their bodies, as it makes it so that they get torn apart. Though, you know, this isn't really a problem for them given the fact that they have an insane healing factor that was bestowed to them by the abundance. So, hey, you know, they get to reap their benefits as best as possible. Additionally, we also see in these items that they literally worship the Brute Lords like Hule as if they were deities, making prayers to them in search of strength before conquest, with lines such as, "Oh Brute Lord, grant me strength," or "grant me like a body of steel." I just thought that was like really cool. Moving on to patch 2.1, we can find two new materials that were added into the game. These ones being pieces of the Amber Lord's body, which fell from them every single time they swung their hammer. Kind of concerning, but you know what? You do you, Qlipoth. And once again, for the abundance, a seed that grows into a plant that we should definitely be scared of. In regards to the Amber Lord's body though, it's really just very simple. Every piece is just bigger than the last, and the final piece, being the Divine Amber, is said to be only able to be chiseled by anyone who is as steadfast as a cornerstone, and those that are able to chisel it will be able to reap their rewards. The second material introduced in 2.1, which in all honesty is the one that I am most interested in, is the new seed that appears to be native to Vunwag. Here we have the Alien Tree Seed, the Nourishing Honey, and the Myriad Fruit. And if we read their descriptions, it is mentioned how this plant is made up of various genes from many different life forms, which, you know, already is really concerning, because how does a plant just get all of these? I'm assuming by consuming them, since there literally is no life forms, as far as I know, in Vunwag other than literal vegetation. People, like, they just grow out of the trees, literally. And it is also mentioned within their descriptions that the honey that is produced can accelerate life and growth, which at this point it's just fitting for the abundance. So I'm kind of wondering if this place has some roots related to the Aeon of Abundance, or maybe a faction or a similar Aeon to Yashur. That is, at the end of the day, though, just assumptions. So let's just keep moving forward. And I kind of want to talk about the fact that in these items descriptions, there's also the mention of an ideal devil, which appears to feed from the life forms that the seed and the nectar is made out of. Like, it literally mentions that the devil will grow to become the myriad fruit and emerge from it as a sort of entity made out of wood and bark, like a living tree person. And it will fight and grow along with the forest, and anything that it finds that is living. Again, terrifying. Their main goal, though, is to adapt infinitely. Interestingly, these may be the beings that are mentioned to uphold the law in Vanwak, because apparently it is mentioned by Yan Ming, who is a former Nameless, that one time he did got to visit Vanwak with the Astral Express. And during this journey, he was a little bit reckless and didn't realize that he broke a branch. And the price he had to pay was that 2 of his ribs had to be broken, for he damaged the ecosystem. It is not stated though how his ribs were broken, and it just said that it hurt a lot, and even though he healed rather quickly, he got traumatized by the experience. So that honestly just leads me to 2 different conclusions on what could have happened. One is that, maybe he just encountered one of these like wood-like entities and that broke his ribs. And the other one, which I feel like would fit more like the themes of abundance, is that the planet itself just manifested that upon him. Like, we already have a plant that makes people's bones twitch and be in pain, so why couldn't this one just happen to be offended and then break your bones? Either way, both of these implications are quite terrifying, and I hope we go to Vanwak, but I'm also scared shitless. The next trace level up material are bullets that we were introduced to in patch 2.2. One would likely think of these as references to Budhill, since, he's a cowboy, he shoots guns. His whole gimmick when he was calling the Galaxy Rangers is that he shot a special bullet, and in all honesty, Tiernan also had these sort of cowboy gunslinger aesthetics. But you would be wrong, this isn't really a reference to Budhill or Galaxy Rangers. Yeah, I was honestly as surprised as you are, because apparently, or at least to my own understanding, every single one of these bullets are ones that have already been fired before. Every bullet is more effective than the last, and the way that they kind of show this is by describing what was shot at with each specific bullet. Going from just being able to slay average monsters to then being used to be shot at trained soldiers and possibly implications of war. But the last bullet in particular mentions how it was used to eradicate a Lord Ravager out of existence. Honestly, that just feels like a really cool detail, not something that I was expecting. I'm not sure if this is gonna be lore relevant, but if we ever have Budhill on our side in the story and we have to defeat an Emanator of Destruction, I hope that they do make mention of the counter-temporal shot. And last, but certainly not least, in patch 2.3, we got some animated drawings as our level up materials for characters in the path of erudition. It goes from a rough sketch to a dynamic outline, and it ends on a fully colored animated draft. And the only real thing I could think about is this being somewhat of a reference to just Mr. Reika and the fact that, he exists, that there's cinematography as something important in Penacony. But beyond that, there really wasn't anything else I could potentially add here. Like, it's just information about Clocky and nothing else. Maybe I'm missing something. If one of you guys have like knowledge of what this would be, I would be more than happy to learn about it. The best thing that I could come up with is that this potentially was telling us, hey, the next storyline in the future is gonna be regarding cinematography, because that was like the biggest factor. Not really the biggest factor, but like one of the big factors in the Rapist storyline, with Mr. Reika being one of like the background characters that was in there to record everything as a memo keeper and then make his own little film about what happened. Yeah, I don't know, that's just all I got. But yeah, that would essentially wrap up every single one of the Ascension materials that we find within Honkai Star Rail. Personally, I'm actually surprised that this took only 25 minutes. I thought I would be yapping a lot more, but I know that if I was to yap way too much, the video would have gotten boring. I know that I tend to still yap and get distracted, so apologies about that. Still, this video was honestly very fun to make. I'm hoping to hear from you guys what your opinions are on just like, you know, the lore of Star Rail as a whole, and like what other things you might think that these materials might suggest that in the future. I gave out the best of my ability, but yeah, the ones that I'm most interested by is those dream catchers sort of things of Nihility back in 1.0. I don't think we've had anything that could be related to that. So if you guys have any theories, by all means, drop them down in the comments. Yeah. Once again, I would like to thank you guys for subscribing, and if you are enjoying this sort of content, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or that like button, because I always forget to ask about that, and now I'm remembering. Weirdest outro that I've done so far, because my mind is honestly all over the place. But no, genuinely speaking, y'all are great. I'm so thankful that we keep growing, we keep having our little discussions, and overall, I just really adore this game, and I love overthinking the hell out of it. So yeah, thank you for being part of this community. With all that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, morning, whatever time zone applies to you at the moment that you're watching this video. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye!